I'm gonna tell you a story of the first thing I've done said. If time doesn't work the way you think it does, you call the Oracle on the one side, you walk at the call. So, I got briefly into clarity in my last video, so I'm gonna, do a little. Oh, that's rude. It gotta be like that. I was gonna do this episode on quiet, but I opened the episode. I opened the freaking. I unminimized something. It won't load now. Alright, that's fantastic. Alright, so, there are three kinds of quiet, basically. There's madness, clarity, and Jhor. Madness is a type of quiet affiliated with dynamism aspect of the metaphysical trinity. Dynamism madness comes to mages who are too overwhelmed with raw random changes and chaos. This sort of quiet leads to hallucination, sensory deprivation, and eventually the formation of hobgoblins and mindscapes. No fun. The mage becomes trapped in a rapidly changing world created in his own mind, unable to determine the real from the imagined. Marauders are thought to exist within a permanent state of madness, unable to connect with any sort of objective world. Probably makes going to work real hard. A mage who enters quiet with an excess of dynamic resonance will probably suffer madness. The effects of madness are fairly random, but they can get quite drastic if the mage is overwhelmed with too much paradox or just with a nasty strike. As always, the mage's particular form of resonance may color the events of inspired by madness, which would serve as a possible way to separate fiction from reality. Jhor. The underworld carries its own potent resonance, the energy of death itself. Mages who dabble too much in such studies can be afflicted with Jhor, the resonance of death energy. Jhor can be considered as a form of quiet, albeit one that affects death mages instead of the marauders. Development. Normally, souls discharge that energy in the cycle of discharge that energy in the cycle of death, but such an accumulation is unhealthy and unbalancing in the living. Mages who work with the entropic energies, who dabble in necromancy and death, often accumulate Jhor. Tradition mages who enter the underworld too frequently, or spend too much time studying the Deadlands, or who associate too much with death, tend to develop Jhor. Euthanatos in particular have learned to recognize this malady due to their long association with the Deathlands. They can often help mages in the early stages to achieve a better level of balance. This tradition is also the one that most affected by Jhor, and as a result, they are extremely vigilant in their detection of its symptoms in themselves and others. Consequences: the mage assumes a pallid visage and obsession with death. The mage's normal moral inhibitions fall away in favor of desire to associate with and understand death energy. In actuality, the mage becomes fixated on the return to primordialism, but the living mind and body cannot handle this reunification. As a result, the mage slides into a study of necromancy and draws away from other living beings, becoming gaunt and sociopathic, eventually degenerating into little more than a magical killer. Most of them sooner or later try to bring down the shroud. Wow, that's bad. That's bad. You shouldn't try to bring down the shroud. You shouldn't. You shouldn't try to bring down the Zavashadaya. You shouldn't. And clarity. For mages who embody stasis and move away from dynamism, the threat of clarity lurks. A mage under the influence of clarity does not seem to suffer delusions or episodes like a mage afflicted with madness, which is fascinating considering how delusional the state of clarity actually is. Anyway, instead, the mage blocks out those parts of the world that do not fit with her vision. That's what I'm talking about being delusional. You literally block out parts of Tapa. That won't work. That won't work long term. Chances of survival? Below zero. She instead becomes transfixed on a particular goal or idea and pursues it to the unhealthy exclusion of other activities. She becomes convinced of a single way of doing things and becomes unable to deal with new situations or compromises. Eventually, a mage overcomes clarity, becomes a mindless drone, subservient to some higher pattern of stasis perceived only in her crazed yet early mind. Naturally, clarity shows up most highly in static mages with pattern avatars like tech rats. Some traditionalists theorize that high-rank members of the technocracies are so afflicted with clarity that they are literally unable to compromise on the fate of the world. That makes sense. That makes sense. All right, and quiet. Quiet is a type of magical delusion that distorts afflicted mages. Views of reality, each associated with one particular kind of resonance, and indicates a mage who is too closely associated with one type, a particular branch of the metaphysical trinity. By the way, there are four resonance types. There's dynamic, static, entropic, and questing. Questing is all about balance. You don't actually like you as a player choose your character's resonance, but like character doesn't actually choose that. It's just sort of like the nature of their paratmon, the nature of their higher soul. They might have like an entropic higher soul, they might have a static higher soul, they might have a dynamic higher soul, they might have a questing higher soul. This is kind of how it works. Madness, a dynamic quiet, clarity, a static quiet, and Jhor, an entropic quiet. There is no quiet for questing. Which isn't weird at all, actually. Interestingly enough, so like in White Wolf terms, dynamism is associated with wild. Stasis is associated with Weaver. Entropy is associated with Worm. It just is. There isn't actually like a figure per se associated with questing, but I kind of feel like it's actually literally like the weird. And you can actually like tetragrammaton all four of them. You can be like WER, like the worm is already 4 letters. The wild is already 4 letters. You can do WYVR for Weaver. And you can do, and weird is already 4 letters. I can just WYRD. It's pretty neat. You can like tetragrammaton all 4 of them if you really wanted to. While quiet is normally temporary, some mages can be in a permanent state of quiet. These mages are called marauders. All marauders are in a permanent state of madness, but some have other forms of quiet as well. And that is my episode on the quiet. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe.